Hey, it's Kelly here with Zinni Me, and I am honored to have Dr. Stephen Brownlow from Austin, Texas, here today. He's the founder of Adept Psychology and Adept Theory, and he has a clinical practice anywhere that you have a computer. So I want to thank you for taking time to meet with me. I've been really excited to interview you, and I think what we're going to talk about today is really important because clinical efficacy is something that I think is a topic that we don't talk about in open circles. I think there's a lot of question of, how do I know if this was a good session or if I'm an effective therapist? But we don't really talk about it with our peers. So hopefully you're going to help demystify some stuff and bring some things to light and get rid of some of that shame. So I'm excited.
Okay, good. Well, I hope so too. Listen, thanks for having me on. I'm honored to be here.
Well, tell me a little bit about Adept, what it is, and why you decided to create it.
Well, I guess Adept is a couple different things. Adept is firstly, it's sort of my approach. It's applied dynamic emotional processing theory is what it stands for. And it's all of those. It's applied theory, it's dynamic, and it really centers on dealing with emotions. And the way it differs from, I guess, what we learn, what we're taught. Typically in grad school, in supervision, we're taught to look at emotions, but we look at them indirectly. We look at them through beliefs, or we look at them through motivations, or we look at them through relationships, or we look at them through something, some other lens. And in fact, if we deal with the emotions directly, all of those other things change. And it occurred to me a long time ago that was when I watched good therapists, that's what they did. They just couldn't ever tell me how they knew to do it, or why they did it, or why they decided to go off script. And so at that point, I realized that it was the scripts that were wrong. It was our therapy scripts that we needed to figure out a different way of doing things. And so that's really where the theory came from. So then when I set up my practice, I just, it was Adept Psychology, of course. I mean, I want people to be proficient, because Adept does mean proficient. That's what I want people to be.
Mm-hmm. And so how do you think it's different? Like, what are some points that make it different than what we learn in grad school? I know you're saying that it's because we look in grad school, we're taught to look at them indirectly. Can you speak more about that, what that means?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things, I think most people who, if you have a background in trauma counseling especially, I think one of the things that you start realizing very quickly is that as you get into what's really at the bottom of things, you find memories, old memories of something that happened a long time ago that people just want to keep locked away and don't want to deal with. And if you can get them to deal with those and process all the anxiety around it, first of all, but then all the hard hurt feelings that are underneath that, then things just change markedly. And it turns out that there's a lot more, you can do that with a lot more things than trauma. Personality disorders really function the same way. Eating disorders function the same way. When you start looking at the sort of our bread and butter, the depression and anxiety and that stuff that most of us end up seeing, those things actually are defenses against something that's underneath that. And if you deal with what's underneath that, you don't have to worry about the depression and anxiety anymore. That stuff just kind of melts away because you don't keep defenses that aren't defending anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really my goal, is to and what Adept really tries to do is to get in and out of somebody's life pretty quickly. Usually not very many sessions, you can really get people in touch with really who they are underneath all of this other stuff. And once you get through the pain and the defenses leave, then a lot of things change. All of the beliefs and stuff that are built up around that, all the personality that's built up around that just sort of leaves. And so you don't have to continue fighting through that stuff anymore.
And so do you teach Adept to therapists?
I do. I train people on how to do this stuff. I also work with therapists on clearing out some of their own stuff. You get a lot of, because a lot of, one of the things that we see with, I use CBT as an example. We have this idea that people do this stuff because of faulty beliefs, and that's true as far as it goes. But what we don't really look at is where the beliefs come from, and the beliefs are really there because of all this early emotional stuff. We put that up to explain to ourselves what happened and how we can prevent it from happening again. So if you deal with things on that level, sort of the emotional level beneath the beliefs, then those beliefs change. And so all of people's self-limiting head trash kind of stuff, you can resolve very quickly once you get to the truth of what really happened and people realize, okay, I did the best I could. This is what happened when I was 3 or whatever. They feel it, they regulate it. I mean, when you're 3, it's hard to regulate that. You don't have, your parents aren't helping. I mean, your parents cause it, to be honest, a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. And and probably not, probably not because they mean you any ill will, but they just do.
Yeah.
And then they don't stick around to help you regulate it. And so, but by the time you're, 25 or 30, you ought to be able to kind of take care of some of that on your own with some help.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the culture of therapy, current therapists in private practice, and efficacy, and then tie it back to Adept and how it connects. So what do you perceive is the culture of therapists in private practice in regards to efficacy and what's happening to us clinically? Tough question. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think what happens is that, I mean, the place I'm going to start is that there's somebody did a study years ago. I don't really remember, but they looked. It was really simple. They wanted to see what percent of drivers thought they were above average, and it was like 90%. Okay, and they all think, oh, it's all those other jerks on the road, because they see what the other jerks are doing on the road, but they sort of forgive their own mistakes, or they don't notice them. And I think therapists are the same way. I think we all have this idea that we're above average, we're better than everybody else. But when you really look at it, when you look at efficacy, when you look at how many people actually meet their goals, and you look at all the things that maybe not their actual goals, but all the indicators that things are going well, the development of a sense of humor and playfulness and ability to do more stuff that they couldn't do before, and they're just sort of freer people, and they start having more ideas and more intuitions, and they just get into the flow of life in a completely different way. And you look at what percentage of clients actually achieve that, and it's not high.
And that's
not.
based on research, right, Stephen?
Yeah, that is based on
That's
research.
just not opinion. I know that.
That's not opinion.
You're a
That's
researcher.
research, and the research shows that really, all these people, well, CBT is better than psychoanalysis or whatever, and they'll claim that, but when you look at the actual outcome studies, they have about the same degree of clinical effectiveness, and so with the same kinds of populations, and so then the question is, well, so why is some better than the other? But the other piece of research that we know that the other piece of research that we don't publicize as much is that there's some therapists that just, no matter what they say they're doing, get really high success rates. I mean, instead of 2/3, it's 95% consistently. And so then the question is, why aren't we all doing what those people do? And my answer to that is really, it's not even what they say they're doing. If you watch them, they all do pretty much the same kinds of things. And so then to me, the question is, why aren't we modeling those things and teaching people to do that? And the answer's always been, well, people don't have that kind of clinical intuition. Maybe they don't have the same sensitivity to other people's what motivates people, how they're feeling. They don't have the same degree of empathy because they haven't been in practice as long. Okay, that's a good answer. Okay, so then the next question again is, why aren't we finding people that have that kind of sensitivity and empathy and intuitive background and training them, so that we could have a whole lot more people that are getting the 95% success rates? Because there's too many crazy people for me to deal with all by myself, and you too. Yeah, I mean, there's just too many to go around for us, right?
Right. I think we all need some healing in some way because of, like what you're saying, like early misattunements and attachment and things like that. We all have them, and they impact us in different ways. And I think lots of people can benefit from therapy, and not necessarily even long term or short, whatever. But like what you're saying is that some therapists just show a higher efficacy than others. And what do you think that they're doing? I mean, what are some of those?
I think a lot of it is mindset. And I think I've really been trying to figure out how what I do is different than what most therapists do. And what I've really kind of realized is that I think one of the things we teach in grad school is to in supervision is to really pay attention to symptoms and to treat symptoms and to do that kind of stuff, to kind of ameliorate people's pain and that kind of stuff, put a Band-Aid on things, help people cope better. And to me, that's all coming in from the outside. It's an outside-in approach. And what we're really looking for, there was an old book, gosh, back in the 60s, I think, maybe early 70s, Václavic, Weekland, and Fish, I think, wrote the book Change, and they made the distinction between first order change and second order change, and one is surface change and the other is sort of internal change. And to me, it's like, no, we're looking at this all wrong. What we need to be doing is changing people from the inside out. It's, if you go for the second order change, you can do that and you know what you're doing. And there are some tricks to that, because you have to kind of be able to worm around past people's defenses and understand how the unconscious works and some things like that. But those are tricks that you can learn pretty quickly. If you change people from the inside out, then things just pop.
Right. So
then it changes.
you'd agree that people can learn to be more effective.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Now, but like I said, I mean, I saw something, a few months ago, I was reading something online where somebody had interviewed Leslie Greenberg, who was the guy who founded emotion focused therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he sort of, and then taught Sue Johnson, and she's made a killing teaching, designing it for couples, and that's good. I mean, it's good. But one of his points was that because he had set up this big training institute over in Scandinavia somewhere in Europe. And one of his points was that it took at least 2 years to teach new therapists how to be empathic. Mm-hmm. And I thought that's a waste of time. Why aren't we finding people that are empathic to begin with? Mm-hmm. Instead of teaching, I mean, if I were going to teach empathy to someone who was really analytic, it would probably take 2 years, but there's an awful lot of therapists that are really empathic already that are just kind of miscast doing CBT or doing attachment work for that matter. That you really don't have to do things that way. You can change all of that much more easily and directly by releasing some pain mm-hmm. and working through that with people.
I think the whole reason why you and I decided to do this interview is you and I were talking about how we both kind of were talking how we agree that therapists carry a lot of shame or this hidden kind of sense of wondering if they're helping or not. Some therapists I meet really do know. They can claim it and they're like, yes, I am effective. I see couples. This is the changes I see. I know that I'm effective. But I find a lot of people in talking to them in consultation and in coaching, they don't know. And they feel very insecure and they're holding a front of like, yeah, I got this. I know what I'm doing. But inside it feels like I don't know. And I've even had times like that, right? Where you leave a session, you're like, what? Was that effective or not? I mean, and so I have to pull.
What's happened?
I know. So pulling back, I can see, but sometimes in the midst, it feels like messy. And so, how can we deal with that shame, and why do therapists need to talk more about being effective and really kind of pulling back the curtain to show this part of our world, of our culture, of the importance of it?
I guess one reason that we don't talk about that is because we're afraid that our clients are going to start believing that we're as big a fraud as we already think we are ourselves.
That's great. Yeah, that's true.
And I think I think that's true. Anytime, if you have a practice, anytime you start graduating clients and the phone isn't ringing off the hook, that's immediately one of the first things that goes through therapists' heads. And a lot of that is because of their own head trash. Because even when we send therapists to therapy and tell them, well, you have to get it as part of your training program or whatever, most therapists are not doing this stuff. They're not really helping. And so the therapists that the therapists go to don't know how to do this, and so they're not helping them very much either. I think the other part of it, though, I think the way we train people in grad school is completely screwed up. I mean, I maybe I overstated that. It's highly screwed up. I'll put it that way. We round people up, and we get a bunch of people that are basically very empathic and very sensitive and have spent all their lives fixing their families and keeping the lid on things and understanding what motivates people. And everybody's always told them, oh, you make a great therapist. And they go to grad school, and the first thing we do is tell them they don't know anything. And then we start teaching them a whole bunch of theory that, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the theory that they teach works 2/3 of the time, and 1/3 of those, 1/3 of those 2/3, or so half of the 2/3 gets well on the waiting list. So, so you're really, if a third gets better on their own and a third, you're getting a third and you're missing a third, that doesn't feel good. Mm-hmm. That doesn't feel good. And sooner or later, you're going to run into the client or clients who start hooking into your own shit. And so all of this stuff that you've got from when you were 2 or 3 years old starts getting pulled at, and all of a sudden then you're in a world of trouble. And so that's when people start doubting themselves, and they don't feel like marketing their practice. And
no, I think, to be honest, this topic steps on people's toes. It doesn't feel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not going to be surprised if some people are offended or shocked, but I think it is something we have to talk about. And like what you're saying, the system is broken, and some people are like, well, let's change the system. And my kind of thinking is the education system is pretty hard to change. So why not change what within ourselves?
Change us. I mean, just recognize, it's not that what we learn is useless, but if that's all we ever learn, we're in trouble.
Right.
We're in big trouble, because we're not gonna get it on our own.
I think too, even in business coaching, it's like when I talk to a person that's newly licensed, they'll say, well, I'm just newly licensed. And I say, well, when you go through school, you're told you don't know anything. And then as an intern, you're told you still don't know anything. And then after you finish your hours, you still don't know anything until you take a test. Well, once you're licensed, you still don't know a whole lot until you've been licensed at least 2 years. And then you can be a supervisor. After that, do you really know anything until you have certifications? It's just sort of culturally this sense of, like what you're saying, we don't enhance what is there and build upon the skills that drew them to the field anyway. I think so. I think that's exactly it. And I think that you can start with the people, the people that go into the field, not all of them, but a lot of them are what I call natural therapists. I mean, they are the people that are very sensitive and empathic and intuitive and just, can walk into a room and immediately understand what's going on and understand what all the relationships are about and understand what's motivating different people and how to maneuver them so that they can stay safe and get what they want and whatever. Those are great skills in therapy. And if that's what you do, if that's what you're naturally good at, and they have you doing CBT at the level that an iPhone app can do it, mm-hmm. then you're wasting your time. Mm-hmm. And you're wasting your time. And you're wasting your talent too,
Yeah, it's very, very hard to feel good about that. But that's what I'm telling you, I was a training director for an internship site for a while, a doctoral internship site, and it was interesting because I got to interview people from basically all over North America who were applying for this internship, because in psychology there aren't very many accredited internships. There's like maybe half to 2/3 the number of that there are candidates every year of people who want the internship. So it's a really, so it's definitely a buyer's market if if you have an internship. And so I'm sitting there and I'm interviewing all these people and I'm skimming off. I'm only taking the best people to interview, and I'm looking at recommendations, and I'm looking at GPAs, and I'm looking at all this stuff. And I'm finding all these people that have these recommendations. Oh God, this is a great natural therapist. I have a great, and I bring them in and I start talking to them, and immediately they start, and it's they can tell they're just scared from what they heard in grad school. And so they're telling me, oh yes, I'm very strong as CBT and all this stuff. And it's like, next. If you're going to tell me that, I mean, and you're not going to change from that, you're not going to think about doing things a different way, then you're not going to be helpful here. You're not going to help enough of my people.
Right. So how does someone know that they need help?
I think the same way anybody knows that they need help. I mean, I think if you're feeling depressed and overwhelmed and can't motivate yourself to get up and do the things you need to do, you're not writing notes, you're not meeting with your colleagues, you're not marketing your practice, you're not doing any of the kinds of things that you kind of know you need to do, it's really hard to avoid that. It's really hard to avoid that. I mean, all of those are just signs that you're struggling. And I think the other thing you look at is really how the patients are doing, how your clients are doing. And if you are kind of struggling to go along and a lot of what you're doing is just slapping Band-Aids on and getting people to cope better with being miserable, people don't come to therapy because they want to cope better with being miserable. They come to therapy because they want to feel better. And if we're not helping them feel better, I mean, yeah, okay, I know that, stuff happens. People get sick, people die. You're never going to feel good about losing your spouse that you've been married to for 45 years. I understand that. But there's a difference between that and sort of acknowledging that and recognizing that, yes, it's a loss, it's a big hole. How are we going to fill that? And how much time do we want to take to do that? Let's take as much time as we need to. Don't rush into anything, but let's kind of understand what's going on and thoroughly grieve this loss and move on when we're ready. There's a big difference from that and just kind of slapping Band-Aids on things and oh yeah, okay, we got to get you back in the game. We're going to do this, and oh, we're going to give you 5 sessions of whatever that's going to get you back on the road, and then we can give you some medicine to keep you going. And that's what, unfortunately, we've in many ways have become an insurance-driven business. And that's what the insurance companies would like nothing better than to put people on medication. And I'm telling you, I think I can see the time coming when they're not going to pay therapists if therapists don't show that they're better than a CBT app, then they'll buy everybody a CBT app. Mm-hmm. Because that's a lot cheaper.
Yes.
I mean, it's just honest. And so if that's what you can do, if that's what you learned in grad school, and that's what you do, and you can, you can be effective a half of the time, 2/3 of the time, and that's about it. that then you're looking at going out of business in the next not too many years, unfortunately.
Right. So my computer's about
God,
to
Debbie
die.
Downer over here. But I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think we have to face that.
Yeah. This is gonna. I think some people are gonna have strong visceral reaction to this.
Oh, I think Well, Kelly, what the hell are you doing? Letting this crack pop on.
Hold on, let me go get my charger for my computer. It's about to die. Bad planning on my part. And then we can finish up. See where an outlet is.
Oh yeah, haven't figured out your house yet.
Huh?
Haven't figured out the house yet.
No.
Like I don't know where the outlet is.
Where does this switch go? Okay, that works. But this is, I know you don't mean to be Debbie Downer, but the thing is, look, I think it's a lot of what we feel. I mean, honestly, like I get on the phone and I do a ton of consults with therapists. And it is this overall feeling of, my business is struggling, or it's even people that are doing well in business still are wondering, am I the best I can be? Am I efficient? Am I effective? Am I doing the best I can? I think people that really do care about this work do want to be better, but sometimes they just don't know how, and we don't want to talk about it. So we'll go get our trainings and our CEUs, and maybe some of us will get supervision or clinical consultation, but we kind of hide that insecurity. And what I love about you is that you're very passionate about pulling people out of that. Like this stuff, the Adept stuff is not just all made up in your head. Like you said before the call, you were telling me about how you had a footlocker of research articles. I mean, you researched and you put data together, and this is based upon research. This is not just like random, these are my thoughts, so I'm going to create a theory around it.
That's right.
Right? Because
unfounded speculation.
Right, because you really do care. And so how can people learn more about Adept, or how to become more effective and feel good about the work that they're doing and really know that they're making a difference? How could they do that with you?
Well, the easiest way is to go to the website, adeptpsychology.com. Mm-hmm. There's a ton of information on there. Just go and explore and see if there are things there, and if it speaks to you, if it looks like something that you're interested in, get yourself on the mailing list, and let me, let's start a conversation. I'm planning. I guess this is the time to say I'm planning in the next couple of weeks to have a webinar that I'm going to be doing, because I keep being asked about emotions and stuff like that, and so I'm going to do it. I call it the 5 kinds of emotions, and really part of it is that I see people get so twisted up about this stuff, and so I see stuff, and I see this in professionals saying this stuff, where they'll say things like, well, guilt is good and shame is bad. Okay, where did you get that? Oh, Brené Brown said it, so it must be true. Well, I like Brené Brown. I like her work, but I think you didn't understand that and you didn't quite understand that right. I don't think, and it's not that they don't know what they're talking about. It's just the categorical nature of that isn't accurate. Or you see these things I saw this question recently on LinkedIn: is anger bad for a relationship? Well, gosh, I sat down and I thought about what anger could mean in a relationship, and I actually thought of 7 different things. And some of them are good, and some of them are bad, and some of them don't matter. And so that's it. That's not a yes or no answer, but what you get to those things are yes or no answers.
Right.
And so I think it's because people don't understand the difference, because we, in English and really in every other language, we kind of lump a bunch of different stuff into the same basket, that until you understand that, you're going to keep making the same mistakes. Mm-hmm. And I think the literature is really very clear on some of this stuff, but less clear than it could be, because the people who are doing the research don't understand some of these distinctions either. So you really have to read through a footlocker full of research to figure out exactly what the point is.
Yeah. So you're going to do a webinar in a few weeks. I'll be
sure
to
a couple weeks.
I'll post the link to it in the blog, so people can sign up if they want to attend. I will do my best to be there, because I'm always wanting to learn from you. Okay. That's actually how I met you. I don't know if you remember, but we met on LinkedIn, and it was because of your responses in the groups. So I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, I remember that, and then I got your sort of form response, I guess, and maybe I shouldn't call it that, but I got your, hey, would you like to talk?
Yeah.
And I thought, sure, I'll talk to anybody, but I'm not expecting anything, and that's fine. And I have to say, I didn't expect that talk, actually, because I got on the phone with Miranda, and it was like, and I'm very used to trying to explain stuff to people and have people saying either ooh, or totally not understanding what I'm talking about. And I got on the phone call with Miranda, and it's like she got it immediately. Yeah. And it was like, wow. Yeah. And so by the time I got off the phone, I was I was a Zinni-Me client. And it was, I mean, it actually, by the time I got off the phone, I was asking her, okay, where do I sign up? How much is it? I mean, it was, yeah.
I think, and the reason why we're doing this is because I do believe therapists need the knowledge that you have. And I experience you as a very warm, caring person, but you're also going to be pretty honest, straight shooter, That's one thing I've liked about you. And, if anything from this talk, that therapists can walk away knowing they're not alone, that there are things that they can be doing to become more effective, and that if you feel like what you were taught in grad school isn't totally spot on, you're right. To feel affirmed in some of those places that are hidden and not discussed, and that there are many ways to become better. And one of those ways is to kind of check out what you're doing in Adept. It's very cool stuff. And I appreciate you taking the time to share it with us.
I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so did I.